Welcome to The Change Agent, the podcast that aims to help you become a more effective leader, smarter project manager, and a high-impact contributor to your organization. Each and every episode gives you actionable strategies and perspectives in leadership, project management, and team building so that you and your team can deliver real value, exceed expectations, and rise above the rest. Follow me every week for new content. I hope you're looking forward to today's episode as much as I am, so let's get ready and let's lead. Welcome back, and welcome to episode 6 of season 2. I'm Eric, and today we're going to indulge ourselves in a little bit of fun. We're going to step away from the dry material of learning about project management from the PMBOK guide, and we're going to move into something I would like to try to do at least once every season, is to give an episode for about 30 minutes or so on experiences in leadership, where I take experiences that I've had in my journey in leadership and project management and provide those experiences to you so that you can see how those experiences panned out, and maybe even what type of leadership characteristics I exhibited or didn't exhibit that either helped the situation or didn't help the situation. So the first one, by the way, what we're going to do after this is, after each story and after I kind of go through the meat of it all, there'll be a learning lesson for each one of them, right? So you'll have a kind of a story, and then you'll have a learning lesson about that. So we can really dive into it and see some leadership aspects of the response to that particular situation. So the first one is dealing with non-engagement. Non-engagement can be a problem for any project manager. It really does create risks, not just in your communications, but also in your execution of the project. And so dealing with non-engagement can be kind of a trouble. It can be tricky. It depends on why someone's not engaging. It could be you that's not engaging. Who knows? But in my particular case, I had an employee that was on my team. We'd been working together for a year or more, and this individual had expressed at some point via email that he wanted to assume some more challenging roles, leading some tasks, leading some project pieces, some elements of work within the task order. And I had no problem doing that. I thought the individual was very smart, and still do. However, it was very difficult for me to understand exactly why this individual stopped communicating with me after we started giving them tasks to complete. This individual and I were separated geographically. They were in a different city than I was. But we had, prior to him assuming these tasks, made a plan as to what it is he wanted to do, how he was going to complete them, what my expectations were in terms of reporting the status of those things, and what the roadmap looked like for him going forward from a professional development perspective. Well, when the individual started getting tasks, they didn't complete them. They didn't respond to anything where I inquired about the status of those things. And it turns out, it just appears that this individual had shut off for some reason, and I to this day, I don't know exactly what happened. What I do know is that afterwards, I got tired of waiting. Obviously, our work can't wait for someone to decide to start talking. If you have people that are expecting deliverables, those things need to get completed. And if someone's not taking on the role that they wanted or that you'd given them, you need to be moving that work to something else, to someone else. And so I did. I moved the work to someone else. And when that happened, this individual immediately created a problem. He started going to the bosses above me, just right over top of me, which is fine if he didn't want to talk to me about something, but I would have appreciated at least a chance to defend it. And he went to them and he stated that I was giving work to specific individuals who were located where I was, and that I was friends with them. And it looked shady. And so that was actually not accurate, what happened. And the bosses didn't come to me about it. So that's, either they didn't care enough, or didn't believe him, or they didn't have the wherewithal to come and engage me about something that had been told to them about me without giving me the chance as well. Well, it turns out that individual was wrong, and so they ended up getting into conversations, and then eventually it led to an ethics complaint. I don't know if that was due to the lack of action by the leadership against me, but he ended up submitting an ethics investigation or complaint, to which they came in and did their investigation. And of course, long story short, they found nothing. In fact, they found all the opposite things, that I had been engaging, that I'd been trying. I'd kept a journal of everything I'd done. And that's something that I think really helped me. Um, when someone stops engaging, or you sense that there's a problem, either through the way they're acting or what they're doing, how they're treating you or whatever, it would be best if you had an ongoing journal to document everything that was going on. And I'm talking about an official one, not scratching it down in your local travel notebook. I'm talking about putting it in a OneNote journal on company uh, systems, so that you can officially pull that stuff back, right? But the ethics case closed. Nothing happened with me. He continued to slander me a little bit on the boss side. And then I flew him out. In the middle of all of this, I flew him from where he was located to where I was located, because maybe it was a communications issue from us not being able to see each other. But in the case when he arrived in the office and I asked him, "How are you? Is there something that I've done wrong? Is there a reason why you wouldn't want to engage with me?" He said absolutely nothing. He sat at the table and just looked around and looked at me and looked around and looked at me and kind of just did that back and forth until about 5 minutes of that went on, and I decided that I wasn't getting anywhere. And so we eventually cut that meeting short. And then the rest of these things happened. Um, so what you have to remember here in the learning lesson is, sometimes you'll have team members who simply don't care how you feel about them. They may see your attempts at leadership, like checking in on them or trying to give them extra work and help them get promoted. They may see them as insincere, right? They may say, "Oh, Eric's trying to give me these items to make him look good so that he gets promoted, but he doesn't really care if I'm getting promoted." To me personally, that's absolutely not true. I did care much about what his professional outlook looked like, and that he was being successful. But when people are assuming that to you, when they're assuming that you're being insincere, and they tell you, that you're just pulling smoke and mirrors over them, that's okay. You have to be the leader anyway. Let it go, because it's their loss if they can't recognize the genuine effort that you're making as a leader. If you are doing that, right? If you're a person who's not going to be honest about the way you lead people, then you're going to have these situations quite often, and you don't have any real recourse if you're not going to be honest with them. So always lead people with integrity. Make sure you try to always keep it real, document your stuff, and let the time that goes by prove your character. Nothing better exemplifies that than a few years later, which was actually about a year or two ago, I guess, from 2025. So it was around 2023. I went to an organizational event after a conference, and this individual appeared in the room on the other side, and I didn't recognize him at first, but then I realized who it was. And I told someone, I was like, this is the individual over there who had, shortly after this ethics issue, moved on to a new company. But I saw them, they saw me. I gave them the proverbial nod of olive branches, right? I just kind of nodded and acknowledged that they were there. I didn't have a mean look on my face, and I was just standing around. But they didn't make an effort to come over here and talk to me. They didn't make an effort to look at me. They just stayed over there where they were. And I could have done the same, but my perspective at the time was, why pull up an old branch and try to fix it right there a few years later? Like, why bring it back alive? But it does strike me that the individual who had so much invested in trying to make me look bad or damage my career wouldn't say anything to me when he had the opportunity, good or bad, which tells me he probably knew that it was wrong to begin with. But whatever the reason, I hope the individual has been growing, and I'm sure they have. They were a smart individual. For whatever reason, our relationship just didn't work out. And what I didn't do was I didn't let it get to me personally. I just kept on moving and doing the best I could. And to this day, anybody you ask in the organization that remembers the situation will tell you that, yeah, it wasn't right on what he did. And so it's a good way you handled it. The next one that I want to talk about is dealing with a life event. You or someone else could go through a life event, and it's important that you always understand how these things can affect you in your workplace, even when they're personal or if they're professional. So life is not always, of course, a bundle of roses. It is a roller coaster. in cases where when it rains, it pours, and when it shines, it burns, right? So and then there are those medium moments where everything just seems to be in balance. And that's where we really want to be. And everybody wants that. Everyone wants happiness and calmness and just getting along and making the project work and doing your thing. But you could have lost someone in your life that meant a lot to you. You could have lost something like a house or a job. You could have been working very, very hard and gotten burnt out and overworked. You could have been moving a different place. You could have moved from one place to another. This often happens with military members, or those that are trying to climb that corporate ladder and take the new role, or even government people who are trying to take a new position, but the new position's in a different city in the United States or somewhere. And so in order to take that new position, they have to move to that new location, which is a new career. You could end up having a new career. Now, in my case, I had lost someone, and there were many things that went on in my life about in response to that. Obviously, you have to do the funeral because it was, when I say lost, I mean they passed away, and so I had to do a funeral. I had to take care of their children, their child, um, and it was a very sticky situation. And there were things that I think that took a lot of bravery for me to do and decisions to make, knowing that I could not take care of the child by myself, considering the role of work that I was in at the time, going back and forth to Afghanistan. And so the child ended up going back to his dad, um, which was the best choice because he was married, he had a stable family, he had another child already. We all had a very good relationship. We kept in touch all the time. He's a very good father. And so it was a very easy decision, though it was hard on me to do so, to give it up. So, uh, what you have to do is remember that whenever you have these life situations, the first thing that you probably need to do is decide what's real. Like you have to look at the situation and remove all of the assumptions out of the way, right? And say, I'm dealing with this. And out of that one thing that I'm dealing with, the loss of someone, what are the factual things that I know I have to complete? And you put them in a list of some sort and say, I gotta prepare for the funeral. I've got to get this. I've got to do that. Whatever the cases are. Let's talk about something. Let's make this example a bit more happy. I'm got a new career, so I have a new career. I'm going to. I have to give my notice over here. I've got to prepare to go over there. I've got to prepare to close out my office and then hopefully get a new office. And I've got to say goodbye to my friends over here, my mates, and I've got to try to figure out how to do these things. And I want to collaborate. So you have all these ideas. But at the end state is that you're always trying to get rid of the assumptions and you're trying to figure out what's the best thing for you. Okay. Always. So in times when we have a lot of change, things have happened, or you see it on the horizon is about to happen, the biggest mistake that people can do is assuming what's caused the situation, unless you happen to make it happen because you got a new career or something like that. Or another mistake is you're going to assume what will happen now or in the future without actually knowing what will happen, or just making assumptions in general, right? So you don't want to do those things. You don't want to assume, because a lot of times when I think maybe you guys have heard that when you have a situation, let's say it's a negative one, and the situation is about to happen and you think it's about to happen, and you make all these assumptions and you're worrying, and then the situation does happen, you didn't suffer once, you suffered twice. You suffered in the beginning when you thought it was going to happen, and then you suffered again after it happened. The best thing we can do is to um, live in that moment and deal with what we can and not worry about something until there's actually something to worry about. Okay. I'm not saying to try not to mitigate a risk. These are different things. I'm talking about, like, if someone says, I heard you're going to get fired, that is not something to get worried about because no one knows that. Only the boss knows that. And you have something you can do to respond to that, right? So there's a risk now that's been brought to you. It's not real yet. It's not an issue. Go to the boss, ask him if that's the case. Go back and look at your performance reviews and see if there's anything that you've done that's been notated that's negative that could lead to a dismissal. So think about being realistic and being tactile when you're dealing with situations like that. So just move forward with today with what you know, address concerns that you have based on the facts that you have, and solve those types of things first. Which leads me to a third rather. The third story is dealing with insincere people. Not that everyone is. Um, in my life as a direct report, I had good managers, I had some bad ones. In cases where I considered the manager less than ideal, it was usually due to the fact that they had made bad decisions, they had the inability to control their emotions, so they got mad and yelled at people, or they had an appearance of a lack of interest in things that were going on, except for one thing, which was the task that we were doing. They didn't care about anything else. They didn't care about stories. They didn't care about spending social time with us, around the water cooler or whatever the cases are. All they cared about was, did you do your task? Go to the next one. That was it. Um, and I approached one of my managers about this appearance of a lack of interest in people, or the lack of care about their career. And the response was not defensive as much as it was dismissive. So dismissing and not dismissing this care, this situation that you bring up is not demonstrating care and leadership. Okay. Because if a leader is wrong and they know it, they'll become defensive. If a leader doesn't care, they'll dismiss it, right? And these are in general terms. I'm not a psychologist, but my perspective from leadership is that bad leaders that know that they're bad and don't want to be called out on it. They get embarrassed when they know it. They're the defensive ones, and the ones that actually don't care, they're the ones who just dismiss it, right? So if you go and you bring a situation to a manager and they just say, "Listen, I appreciate what you did. I appreciate you telling me that. Get back to work, and you can worry about it tomorrow." Those are the insincere ones for the most part. If an individual gets defensive about it, though, that's a different story. Now, managers that exert power over a conversation to avoid the talk is demonstrating to you right away that you are correct, at least in some way. And so I've had managers that I've brought something to, and they just kind of talk right over top of me and tell me to stop, 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 stop. I'm not, without saying the words, they said, I'm not interested. Okay. Now, there's a fine line about caring about you personally and caring about your professional success, because your professional success at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, is what directly impacts the business performance. And people who are under the pressure to perform, like senior managers and directors and vice presidents, they have to, they got to respond to the shareholder, right? If you happen to have those. And they've got things to do. They may have their own professional goals where they want to become get into the C-suite. And so it's a different take for some of them, where they don't care about you from a personal perspective as much as they do from a professional perspective, because what you do professionally impacts performance. And that is just business. Do managers really care about your personal life? Many do, most don't. But it's business, and that's something you have to remember as you go through, and you happen to have a situation where you feel like someone's being insincere. Maybe it's just business and that's all they care about, and that's okay, right? That's all you should care about sometimes, right? I wouldn't say that this is true for one particular organization, though, the U.S. military. And that may be in most Western militaries as well. I know that from experience because I was in the military for many years. And military leadership does have a truly vested interest in the personal lives and the balance of their military members and their family. Because what impacts the military member at home impacts the military member at work. And if a military member is not prepared to do their job, which is win wars and win in combat, because they're distracted by something that happens at home, then they're no longer effective. And so the premise is that you take care of the whole soldier and their family. I just say that because I was in the Army. You take care of the whole service member and their whole family, right? It's a whole package. Okay. And so in that case, I don't think that insincerity is super prevalent in the military as much as it is in the corporate world. But most people at work aren't personally invested in you. This is a learning lesson from this. They're invested in your professional performance, right? They're invested in your outcomes and maybe even a shared convenience that you provide to them. That one, the shared convenience is, I don't know if that's so bad, because like you are doing, I used to have this perspective that as long as I do whatever it is that I can to make my boss look good, my life will be good. That's a shared convenience. You're making it convenient for them. They're looking good. They're getting accolades. You're not caring about the accolades so much, but if your boss is giving them to you, if your manager is giving those accolades back down to you, giving you spot awards, then it's a shared symbiotic relationship, right? And so that's not so bad. Many colleagues really do enjoy your company, and I think that I'm not saying that people are just nasty and don't ever want to talk and they don't care about you. Of course, when you go to happy hours, when you go sit around the cooler, when you're going down the hallway and you pass each other, or someone comes into your office, or you're out on the ground doing some work, of course, the camaraderie that comes with that is superficial to most degrees. But it's really important that you ask yourself how much of that is going to be sincere beyond the workplace. Um, because people spend so much time together, 40 hours a week in most cases, you don't want to make the mistake of thinking that their company, their happy, them being laughing and joking with you at work is genuine long-term concern for you. You need to ask yourself how many people from the past jobs that you've had or in your current one check on you like a true friend did or does on a Sunday with nothing to gain. There's no, hey man, I'm just calling to see how you're doing. By the way, how's the new contract? Is there anything for me? Where they switch from like your personal question right into a business question. Um, and that's okay. Work relationships do serve a purpose. There's a reason for them. And while some of those do actually form into rare bonds that can last, most are transactional only. So remember, when you're at work, you stay professional, you stay kind, you invest wisely in the people who proved that they're truly in your corner on and off the clock. And knowing these things, you'll have managed all of your expectations about what you can expect to get from your work relationships. Now, that moves to the next point of irreplaceability. Now, dealing with the belief that that the more you do for the corporate machine, the more guarantee you'll have in not being replaced is a fallacy, right? I did a lot of good work in my 30-year career so far. I've done, I probably, I think I feel like I can say I've probably done more than the average corporate person has, in terms of what type of work I've done. I've been in combat zones many times. I've traveled around the world for people. I've taken heat. I've done things. I've, you know, stepped up to a challenging situation and succeeded. Um, and that made me feel after many of those had happened that I was, man, it would be tough for them to replace me. To replace me would ingest a high amount of risk into both not just the contract itself and how they're going to perform in the actual execution of the contract, but also the fact that I'm very studious in my work and I know exactly how the company operates. And for me to go to a competitor would be dangerous. So there's risk there. And so there were a lot of reasons that I kind of talked myself into the idea that I was irreplaceable. But believe me, you are not irreplaceable. You are unique, but you're one of many. So how, when you stand out amongst your peers, how do you look to the company? Are you, do I know his name? Do I not know his name? You know, what is it? When I was in basic training in the Army, the last question that I asked the drill sergeant when I left was, do you remember my name? He's like, no. I said, good, then I did my job, right? So remember that you're not irreplaceable, though. I believe that I was. I really enjoyed knowing things. I was proud that I knew things that others didn't, especially within the technical expertise of my field at the time. And it made me feel really good, of course, to know that I was irreplaceable or feel like I was irreplaceable. I liked performing well in high level leadership meetings, talking to high level executives, and then being told afterwards that this particular briefing was excellent. And Eric, we're so good to have you. You're like a Swiss Army knife of all, jack of all trades. You're a Swiss Army knife. You can talk about anything. You know all this stuff. We're really proud to have you a part of the team. Those are really good and probably genuine comments, and I really appreciated what they did. But it made me feel like I was irreplaceable, and that's probably my fault. But regardless, that's a a stepping stone that I have to get over. But you have to remember that you're not the center of people's universe. You're the center of yours and your families, right? The bosses are concerned about the performance of the work, but they're not concerned about your child's school bill or your extracurricular activities or whether or not you get to go and buy that boat or not, right? Would they go out and take care of all your bills if you lost your job? They wouldn't go out and pay for it. Not a chance in the world. The learning lesson here is that no matter how good you are, how much you know, how well you perform, you're not irreplaceable to the system. I'm not saying you're not valuable. You are absolutely valuable, but you're not vital. If you left, even at the highest levels of the company structure, people who leave, they do it all the time. They change people in the C-suite all the time. They change people on the board all the time. They change people as senior managers, middle managers, and lower managers all the time. So you're not irreplaceable. But your real leverage doesn't come from being needed by the company. Your real leverage comes by investing in yourself, by growing and being a well-rounded individual who's fair, who's empathetic, and leads with it by example. Okay. When you do all these things, it's likely you won't have to worry at all about ever losing your job unless something happens to the company from a financial perspective, or there's a takeover, or there's some outside or environmental impact from a policy or something like that. Doge. But when you pour everything into the job and neglect yourself, though, there's only one guaranteed outcome. You're going to burn out and you're going to be disappointed. The people around you will be disappointed. You will have sacrificed moments and experiences that you only get once for something that you could achieve anywhere, anytime. But when you flip the script and you prioritize your life and you're learning and you're at peace with everything you're doing, you're creating something that no job can take from you. It's the fulfillment of accomplishment. The company can move on without you or with you, it doesn't really matter, but you can't leave yourself behind in the process. All right, moving on. Let's go to the next one. Dealing with commitment. So commitment is a tricky one because that's a really hard one to spot. After I got my first company promotion, I saw a lot of the fruits of my labor. I was promoted, I had recognition, I got higher pay, and these are not all bad things. I consistently demonstrated technical expertise in my field. I was very excited about going and demonstrating those at conferences, talking to people about things because I really love my job. I love the field of it, let me put it that way. And I often supported technical proposal writing, uh, developing solutions to send to customers, and the list just goes on. But in some cases, even in some cases, I had overachieved in the things that I thought that I was not able to do. I thought when I first took over a large project that was about $17 million in value, I was nervous and I was scared. And I fought tooth and nail, at least that's how it felt, to go and do those things and to make it successful, engaging the customer, feeling like I was pressured. And I did well and I succeeded. And now that's a closed book and I'm on to something new. But it felt good and it was good. And it encouraged me to increase my commitment to myself and to the company. And we kept on moving, kept on moving. But I also learned just shortly later that the reciprocation of commitment was not there. The amount of work and energy I gave into the company was not being reciprocated after that. The learning lesson here, ladies and gentlemen, is that promotions and recognition do feel great, and they should because you've worked really hard, you've earned it. But don't mistake the professional success for personal security or loyalty from the system. Loyalty to anything is loyalty to the real loyalty is to you and your family. Now, the praise that you get, the higher pay, the sense of purpose, they're all real and they're also just temporary. They don't last forever. You can replace all of those things, but you cannot replace the things that are outside the walls of your work. You can't replace your relationships. You can't replace peace. You can't replace your sense of self if you lose it. It's very difficult if you do to get any of that back. But celebrate your wins. Never let them cloud what priorities you have in your personal life, and keep focused on what truly matters, which is your well-being, your family, your life beyond the job, and things outside the 9 to 5. So that's the only kind of success that does not expire when the title or the role does. Which goes into this other part of how do you balance all of this, right? This is called the walking wire, balancing the ideas with real careers. Now, I know your career matters, and that's really, really good, and I love it. And I love that you are excited about your career, and I hope only the best for you. That's also great. But and maybe you have people that are working with you and they're amazing. That is also very cool. But will they be there to truly build you back though when you fall? If something were to happen and you were to make a mistake, would they be? How many people would be like, okay, look, let's wipe this under the rug and let's continue? No, they're not. Very rare will you have people that are going to go and put themselves at risk of their own career for you, right? So the learning lesson here is that it's okay to love your career. It's okay to be inspired by great people at your work, but don't ever confuse professional momentum with personal loyalty. When you stumble, and you will, the machine will keep on moving. It's not betrayal. It's just the way the business works. So here's what matters. When you talk to people, you speak with truth and kindness. When you show care, do it through consistent action. That's how you do it. You're predictable. I've talked about that before. You're going to be someone that others can count on, not just once, but all the time, because you're predictable. And you're going to be someone that can, hey, if Eric sees me doing this, if I'm late 5 times, he's going to hammer me because he knows that that's what's going to happen. I'm always going to be predictable in the good situations and in the bad. But most important, you're going to prioritize your world, which is your health, your family, your peace. Those are the things that really matter the most. And then you're going to ask yourselves, will that promotion that I'm aiming for be worth a missed birthday because that child is only going to turn 4 or 5 one time? Will that dopamine hit that I get from the screen that I keep staring at off work while I'm outside of hours actually do anything for me and my family and replace the real connection I should be having with them? Overachievement cannot fill emotional gaps, right? It just widens them for the most part. But be excellent at your work. And you are. Good job. You're listening to the podcast. You're spending time on your career, but you're getting a lot of personal things from this. So this is an important thing. This is why these podcasts really matter, because not only do we talk about professional things and how to be good at professional jobs and what we do and how to be a better leader and a better project manager, but we're talking about how to be a better person too, right? Remember why you work. You work so that you can live, love, and grow. You have to be genuine, but you start by being genuine with yourself. It's the best shield that you'll have against disillusionment, the shallow politics that happen around the office, and the friendships that are superficial and vanish the moment that you cost someone something, a dollar or a moment. So make sure your life is not built on those other people's terms. You build it on your own. Next, we want to talk about greed. So greed is a very dangerous perspective. It's nasty, right? It just it's around and it can do a lot of damage. I worked really, really hard on a proposal, developing a strong and realistic technical solution for a problem that we had, and I was very proud about it. My team and I collaborated really well. We spent lots of time sketching technical details and aspects of making it all work. And finally, we delivered this amazing approach to solving a really technically complex problem. Soon after that, though, I discovered that there were those who were around me in that room lurking and waiting to take credit for the work we did. During a briefing to senior management, I saw an individual who was chosen to give this briefing he gave the briefing to senior management on the technical solution, and then they took a lot of the credit and gave none to the team or myself on what was accomplished for that technical solution. And it was well known that this individual, at least in that group that I was in, that they saw this individual as someone who is focused on themselves at the expense of others. And that worked for them because they're successful, if you want to call it that. They climbed the ladder, they're sitting next to VPs and everything else, but it taught me a real lesson that greed is the door to social death. By that, I mean greed is capitulation to selfishness, and selfishness is the door to social death, right? So if you become greedy, you're going to obviously be seen as selfish and not, you don't care about the team, and there's just all the negative connotations that go with that. And that's going to close the door on anyone wanting to be social with you. Not that social performance, if you will, is the culmination of a successful career. But obviously, you want to be appreciated. You want to be respected in your career. And by being greedy, by taking credit when it's not yours, and being selfish, or not seeing yourself as selfish when others do, it's important that you understand that that's the door to social death. The learning lesson here is that success is a real team effort. We already know this, but sometimes the credibility that you deserve, right, can be taken by others, and it can sting when someone tries to take the glory for the hard work you've done, right? And in those moments, you have to remember that greed and selfishness may seem to work in the short term, but they will always leave a mark, and people see it. And to this day, that's how we think about it. Or at least me, I think about an individual who is more concerned with their personal success than the people around them. People do see it. People will remember it. So when you focus solely on your own gain, you'll lose something far more valuable. You'll lose trust, respect, and true collaboration. And that's exactly what this individual lost. Now, it might feel unfair in the moment when this happens to you, but don't let the actions of other people change who you are. Okay. Mike Tyson said, If there's someone, and I'm paraphrasing, if someone has the ability to say something to you or do something to you that makes you truly angry and upset and do things that would not normally be custom to you, that individual is your master. Okay. Real success does not come from taking credit. It comes from lifting other people up, working together, doing the right thing, even when it's not an easy thing to do. And then finally, we'll talk about the last situation is reconnecting, right, with the things around you, taking time for yourself. Go outside when you can, weather permitting, of course, and try to be a child again, right? When children are out running around, they're innocent. They don't have a whole lot of fear. At some point, they learn that. But by nature, they're not fearful. They go out, they discover things. They walk barefoot on the grass. They play around. They lay in the grass. They go on unplanned trips. They go outside, and when you ask them, "What are you guys going to do today?" "I don't really know." Well, they don't have a plan. In our adult life, we should probably assume more characteristics like that. Maybe we go on an unplanned trip. We don't know when we're going to go, but we know we're going to go. And then you make the plan to go. You buy the flight, but you don't necessarily, and you buy a place to stay, of course. But in terms of what you're going to see, what you're going to do, and where you're going to eat, they can all be left to just whims. Just wing it, right? So go out and really connect with your family. Go out and connect with yourself. Find the quiet times and just really enjoy it, right? If you end up having a bad conversation, leave a bad conversation with a smile, knowing that you're going to be okay and that you are not responsible for the happiness of others except for those that you love and care for. And listen to the birds, find the quietness, and etc. Also, remember to move. Solitary lives are the unlived ones, so don't sit still and just be around. Okay. The learning lesson here is taking time for yourself is not just simply a luxury; it's a necessity. Whether it's stepping outside to feel the earth beneath your feet, or whether you're embracing unplanned adventures, or whatever the cases are, you need to take time for yourself so that the weight of other people's expectations don't drain on you. You're the only one responsible for the happiness of those around you, for the happiness of those you love, not everyone in your workplace. Okay. And it's not saying that you can't be personal and that you can't have some degree of care. We would love for people who form relationships at work to form lasting relationships, but they simply don't. And the truth is that you also have to have a certain level of emotional currency to give that to everybody. So do you have that emotional currency to give to everybody you meet to be their best friend? No, I don't think so. But you have to remember to disconnect, recharge, find the quiet moments. It'll enrich your personal life, which means it's going to enrich your professional life. It'll make you more present. It'll make you more energized, and it'll help you get ready to tackle those heavy challenges with a real clear mind, clear knowledge about what's going on. And it'll really be good for your team to see just how well you're getting along. So, in summary, really quickly, you are the steward of your own happiness. I mean, I really think it pays out to dividends just over and over and over and over as you understand that your happiness is what really comes first. You are the sole architect of that. And while other people can provide opportunities for joy and responsibility to embrace and cultivate that happiness, it really lies with you on how well you're going to do that and how much you're going to do that. The empathy that we have for people fosters authenticity in our leadership, which in turn makes us feel more self-worth, right? And by embodying this, you can really reach the highest form of self-realization that being true to yourself consequently leads to you being true to other people. No leader, you guys can argue with me on this one if you want, but no leader can effectively lead without this type of self-awareness. True leadership begins with understanding who you are and owning that truth, right? And the final thought is I'm not trying to be a career killer here. I don't want to talk about things that make you feel like I'm against career growth or professional success. I am absolutely for those things. The difference here is that I want you to strive to succeed. I want you to learn. I want you to excel. If I didn't, I wouldn't be taking my time from my personal life to make these podcasts to share these ideas with you. But what I do want you to remember is that your greatest asset is the people around your family, right? There's people around you, your inner circle, and you. Okay. So yes, get paid. Yes, achieve things, get promoted, but don't ever do that without those who love you and those who matter to you, not walking behind you, but walking beside you. That's it for this episode. If you found it helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and make sure to leave a review. Don't forget to share this show with your friends and colleagues and provide us some recommendations on how we can improve the podcast. And if you have any specific topics you'd like to discuss, send them our way. If you'd like more information on how to engage with me directly, you can head over to kalina-vision.com. That's KALYN as in Nancy A-vision.com. And you can also catch me on YouTube at Beyond the Glare or your favorite podcast platform to learn more and see how we can help you and your team get to the next level. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time.